Alonai was displeased with the actions of his Dionan custodians for presuming to create and rule without his approval. He called on his custodian Dionan to come before him and account for their actions. The first to appear before him was Serathon, the creator of the dragons. Upon appearing to Alonai, he fell to his knees and begged his lord's forgiveness, and even offered to destroy that which he'd created. Alonai smiled at the reverence and apology of his faithful servant and forgave him. He even extended his blessing to the dragons, granting them long life and dominion over non-human races that endured. Many more Dionan would follow in Serathon's footsteps, and they begged forgiveness and pledged themselves to Alonai. Those that came to him willingly and were truly repentant were forgiven, and Alonai was even merciful enough to extend his love and grace to the other races and beings that had been created. Among those races he blessed were the elves and dwarves created by Helgath, the ogres created by Borel, the centaurs, minotaurs, and harpies created by Velitha, and the merfolk created by Agarius. There were a few others that Alonai would bless and permit in his world, but not all. Some of the custodians feared Alonai's wrath and did not appear before him when called. They hid themselves away from their creations, fearful and jealous of their work. Alonai's anger burned against them. "These treacherous servants," he said of them, "who did not partake in outright war against me, and yet still conspired in secret, are no better than vipers that hide under rocks to strike at the heel of the traveler. My will is against them and all they have created." With this decree, the Dionan who hid from Alonai were confined to walk the earth, and never again to appear before Alonai. Their creations did not receive the Creator's blessing, and could only be blessed by the Dionan from whom they were born. These races became known as abominations, beasts and creatures that were not of the Ethereum, but hated the creations of the blessings of Alonai. The Bormen, the Goblins, the Drucha, the Hageth, and the Imps counted among their number. These would stand as eternal enemies to the blessed races of Alonai and his faithful. Many other dark creatures and monsters of the world also were enemies of the Creator, and they too were scattered across the land. But now was the time for Alonai to be heard again by his children. However, mortals had been separated from Alonai for so long that few heard or knew his name or voice, so Alonai sought one who might still listen for his words. And he found him. In a city called Scathium, a blind merchant named Anders was found. A quiet but patient man, his own family had disowned him as he was weak of body and without the ability to see. He was little more than a man who would trade cheap trinkets for coin. Despite his difficult origins and circumstances, he was compassionate, kind, and often spoke of strange dreams he'd have at night. Dreams that he could not see but hear instead. The sounds of something far beyond him speaking, and that voice he heard was glorious. He heard the voice of Alonai and listened. Alonai told him of who he was and about his wishes for the world, about his love for creation and his desire for all to come to him in loyalty and devotion. Becoming the first mortal prophet of the Creator, he traveled to all who would hear him to tell them of Alonai and the great Creator. Most did not heed his words. Many chose to worship their own Dionan gods or just cast him out as a blathering vagrant. And this went on for 2 years. But finally, one man listened. A local warlord and king named Peleus Tigerius. He found Anders' words very interesting and convenient. Peleus was not sure how much he believed in gods and creators, but the message Anders taught was simple, convenient, and it asked little of him. He accepted the message of Anders and had him speak it to all in his province. Humans and non-humans from all around came to his kingdom to hear his words, and what Alonai had told him to say. But the faith of Peleus was tested quickly, when a clan of abominations known as the Drucha marched in force against him. The Drucha were a flesh-eating race that could not walk in the sun. They made their homes in caves and underground passages like vermin, and only came out when the sun was down. Children of the traitor Dionan Morthathos, they were inclined to destroy their human kingdom with all their valor. Their numbers were great, and their bloodthirst fierce. They demonstrated their intent to murder by massacring the peace messengers that Peleus sent to them. They butchered the 3 messengers and drank their blood from the skulls of the dead. The horrific sight sent ripples of fear through the Tigerian soldiers. Peleus tried to send men to attack them during the day when they were weakest, but the Drucha would flee to dark places and caverns where they could easily ambush human soldiers. And if they tried to camp out near these hideaways, the Drucha would attack in force and massacre the men there when the sun went down. The only answer was to meet them in battle at night, when at least the Tigerian soldiers would have their own numbers to aid them. Anders beseeched Peleus to pray to Alanai and to make a sacrifice to him before battle. It was foolishness, Peleus thought. Prayer does not win battles, but only deeds do, strength of arm and sword. But Anders never stopped begging, and soon Peleus relented. After a long prayer and sacrifice, Peleus rode out to the battle with his army with him. The battle was long and fierce, but to everyone's surprise, almost 2 hours before dawn was meant to break, rays of sunshine could be seen sliding up from the horizon. None could explain how it had happened, but it seemed as if something had called the light of the sun to appear early. The panicked Druha fled in fear, only for the Tigerians to cut them down in their retreat. From then on, with this battle won, Peleus was swift to accept this new faith fully, and spread it as far as he could through the land. There was no name for this new faith in a mysterious, all-powerful creator as of yet, but many detractors and enemies of Tigeria named it Anderism, after the prophet himself who spread it. Anderism spread fast, and due to Tigeria's willingness to hear his words and put it to practice, Alanai blessed the Tigerian nation, and from it grew the mighty Tigerian Empire, a mighty power that would spread across the world, bringing many into its fold. This land was primarily human and populous, but no race blessed by Alanai was turned away. And soon, the Tigerian Empire grew into something of a bastion of Anderism for the world to recognize.